administrative training, but over on the right side on the agenda, we have Mesa-specific items that you wanted to cover. So we can cover those, and we can cover basic stuff. I guess I'm going to leave it up to you in terms of what you want to cover. So do you want to just go down the list of the Mesa-specific ones, and we can...
Hey, real quick, are you recording this?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Continue, sorry.
So how do you want to proceed? Do you want me to just go through our typical user and administrative training, or do you want to get into the specific Mesa things that you want to address, or you want to do that after, or how would you like to proceed?
What do you guys feel comfortable with?
Just tell them to go through everything.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like you need everything?
Hold on. That's the left hand of the, and then.
So I am going to be covering the roles and tags and views as part of this, and I guess the subgroups, we can cover that as part of that process. I don't exactly know what you mean by what flagged as what in the system, so someone will have to clarify what that means, but so I can start by just going through things here, and then as people have specific things they want to cover, just jump in and let me know. So
The subgroups, and my biggest concern would be the.
Can you hear Stephen back there?
I'll talk louder. And under roles, it's basically setting the permissions under roles and what those
okay.
be. So the privileges, I would say, I guess the privilege flags.
Okay.
I would like to dig into a little bit, because that's not well documented, and it's something that when we have to make changes, I don't want to give people wrong permissions or too much permissions and stuff like that.
Okay. So yeah, we can dive into that under these the third and fourth bullet here, adding and then reviewing the roles, tags, and views. So we can dig into the permissions a little bit on that. Anything else before I get started?
Nope.
Seems to be
okay. So I think everybody has access to LiGO. And I will provide this PowerPoint to everyone, but I'm pretty sure everyone has access to LiGO at this point.
Brad, before you get too far, I just wanted to make sure we're recording this video.
He is. I already asked.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
Sorry.
we're recording. So just for those, again, you have your vehicles, and you have your vehicles on the map, your assets. Again, you have your track and track points tabs. Across the top, just as a note as we're talking about this in terms of permissions and what people can see, anything can be added and removed from the interface based on permissions, whether it be some of these drop-down menus, some tabs, and so forth. So just keep that in mind, that everything has got a permission set. So if you're not seeing some things like some menus, then you may not have the permissions, or vice versa. There may be things that you don't want to see, and we can turn those off as well and simplify it for you. So things like you might not see the maintenance drop-down or admin drop-down, for example. Those are different menus to interact with the system. There's also a map toolbar. You can turn off specific tools on the map toolbar, for example, if you're not wanting some of those to be active. And then down in the lower section, there's events, geofence, and there's actually a points of interest. And again, these can be turned on or off, or you can make certain components to those read-only versus editable, etc. And then also views. So views are groupings of your assets. Those could also be groupings of users. Those could be groupings of drivers as well. And those are all based on tags, and you can set up those groupings, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. So I think most everybody should know this, but you can interact with the vehicles. You can sort by any of these columns. So you have your vehicle list, last seen, tracks, status. You can right-click on the column header here and add additional fields that are available. Things such as driver name or idling, speed, etc. can be added as columns. And you can also query for any of your assets by entering in the information in this box here and just hitting this little hourglass. This gives you the ability to search. And it doesn't have to be just searching by the name. It can be also additional fields that are, whether it be a user or whether it be a custom field. For example, you're looking for Ford F-150s, for example, or you're looking for certain information. You can just search and it'll bring up just those that you search by here. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's an add new user. So this is where you add users, and we're going to be covering that in a little bit more detail. If you have certain rights too, there's also a little drop-down menu where you can do things like export your users or export the data here. And again, there's a lot of different options here, and some users may not have access to everything, such as importing things or doing certain things. So, but if you need to be able to do certain things, we can, again, those are based on permissions. We can add or remove some of that capability in this little drop down here. Just again, a refresher here, you can right click on any vehicle and draw today's tracks just by right clicking them, as well as you can edit the user. So again, this is sort of an admin function here, but you can edit that vehicle, and for example, if you're adding, again, custom fields or descriptions or so forth, that's how you would do that. And edit user pertains to the vehicle, an actual person that's logging into the system, a driver, so it's not necessarily just the vehicle. It can be someone that's logging into the system. It can also be drivers and other things that are in the system as well. So viewing historic tracks, these are the steps to do that. Basically, you check next to the box of the vehicle or vehicles, so you're not limited to just one vehicle at a time or one day at a time. So you can come down here and check next to the day and then draw tracks, and it'll draw the tracks, historic tracks. So this is if you're wanting to go beyond just today's tracks, you want to go back last week, last month, that's how you would do that. If you want to replay, it's essentially the same steps, other than you, instead of picking draw tracks, you hit replay, and it brings up this dialog box where you can speed up how fast you see the vehicle going. So essentially for that time period that you pick, it could be, within a few hours, it could be over multiple days, but you can draw that, and you can also replay multiple vehicles, so seeing where they cross and that sort of thing. And it's just sort of going back in time and seeing actually the route of the vehicle of where they drove. And again, you can speed it up or slow it down by clicking this, and you can also play and then pause it. You can also grab this little box and drag it back to a specific time period to see exactly where it was. Similar to the column headers on the Vehicles tab, you can also add columns here just by, again, right-clicking where you see Vehicle and add columns. Like, let's say you want to look at speed, or you want to look at, I don't know, some sort of sensor like maybe sweeper down or arm down, etc. You could visually see that here as well. So if you're wanting to get down into the real details, breadcrumb trails, you go to the Tracks Points tab, and then you can interact with, just like up here on the vehicle header, you can add columns. So there's a lot of data that's being collected at the track point level. Again, whether it be things like speed or other information with the actual vehicle, like broom down or, again, arm down or other information is being captured, and you can display that, and then you can click on a record and it'll show you on the map. So when you, whatever column headers that you pick here, it'll add that field to your little pop-up window here. You can also go the other way where you click on the map and it'll highlight the record over here. So it's bidirectional capabilities. You can also export this data out in a variety of formats, CSV, KML. You can also display it in a graph format. So instead of seeing it in a tabular form, you can see it in a graph, and then you can actually click on the graph and it will do a similar thing where it will show you on the map where, where that location is. Okay, so in terms of sort of administrative sort of functions, adding users or adding vehicles, we'll go through a few things here. So some things like adding, you may want to add odometer values for, and this might be more for your fleet side of things where they want to be notified of, you know, when service is due on the vehicle, like oil change or, you know, air filter or tire rotation or those sort of things. And I'll also show you how you can add columns or add custom fields onto these as well. So in terms of add user, again, certain users may, or in certain roles, you may have the ability to add users. You can, again, remove this button here altogether for some of your users that you may not want to be able to add new users. It just comes off the interface based on permissions. And we can go through that in a minute here. The key thing that if you're going to be adding a user in terms of a new user to log into LiGO, you want to pick a user type operator. So operator is someone that's going to be logging into the system. You don't want to pick some of the other options in that drop-down menu are devices or laptops or other types of user types. You don't pick those because that's not someone that's actually logging into the system. But you pick operator, and then the key things is there's some required fields. So username is the person that's actually logging in, meaning that's the name that's logged in. The password, you can enter a password, and then they can change the password under the settings drop-down menu, so you can set one, and then just have them change it when they get in. And then the name is actually a descriptive name, so that's the name that people see maybe in reports or see in the interface, whereas the username is the name that's actually logged in. The other key one that you may want to enter is the email address. So that's if this user needs to receive, for example, reports or notifications, you can add their email address, and that way they can automatically get reports or those sort of things. And then you can also add other things, obviously phone number, description. You can add custom fields. So that, again, can allow you to search by. So going back to searching by over here, if you want to search by a user, obviously you can enter their name, but if there's specific things like a description like supervisor or something else, you can search and it will come up in your list here when you search for that person. So this is a wizard. This is sort of showing you multiple steps here. So you're gonna enter each one of these one at a time. But the roles are going to be, again, based on the roles that are already set up, but you can create additional roles. But for example, there's a transportation role. There may be a transportation administrator versus a transportation supervisor versus, so based on those roles or what permission, sort of the default permission that's already set up for them, or it may be, again, water operator versus a water administrator. So typically, whoever's actually adding users would be one of the administrators in that department. So it might be a water administrator. Water operators don't shouldn't have the ability to add users, but someone that's in a water administrative role or a transportation administrative role has that ability to add users. And then most likely, unless it's someone that they're adding as another administrator, or again, you're maybe adding them as a supervisor or something along those lines. And then tags typically, you're going to, as you're going along and you're setting the role, so let's just say you're creating a new water supervisor person here, and you're going through, you're going to pick the water supervisor role, and then for a tag, by default, you probably want to add them as a users, the complete users, so that way it goes to all users will fall into that group. But you may have a tag that's also water users, so you know, just the water users, essentially those are people that are logging in that are the water specific users that you may either want to report on, or you know, you can have that as a view. In other words, you want to be able to, as a water administrator, you want to see all of the water users, so you could go to a water users view and be able to see all those users in that water users view. And the other thing there is with the tags is you can set up, based on those tags, you can get reports that go to those specific tags. So it could be when you're creating one for a users group, it might be specific reports that you want, like, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, as I mentioned, water users. It could be specifically for certain reports as well you want. So when you're setting up a schedule report, you can pick that tag to receive reports based on that tag. So it might be, again, it might be a water supervisor or water superintendent or something that gets these type of reports, and it's based on tags where you can sort of filter down. And that's really what one of the questions was, being able to do subgroups. So subgroups are really based on tags. So what we can do is, for example, you can create a copy of one, and then you can adjust it based on that. But the tags are really where you can create subgroups within, maybe you have, again, water, and then you have maybe distribution versus construction. You want to do a subgroup. And that's how you can sort of do that based on those tags. I think once we get in, we can go through it, and actually I can show you how that works. So again, right-clicking, edit user. This allows you to update, modify the vehicle, or the user, or say driver. That's how you do that, is you right-click, edit user. Typically, you do not want to change the username. You may want to change the name, unless, of course, so the key thing is when you're thinking about this is you want to maintain maybe history. So you have to think about how you want to maintain history of these. So if it's a vehicle, a lot of times, you know, when we get a request to send you, let's say, a replacement device, a lot of times what we'll do is we come in and we change the ID out, but we maintain the history of that by just switching out the mobile ID. And then in the description or in a custom field, we add some sort of historical content in there saying this was a certain, you know, vehicle, and it was replaced on X date or something along those lines. But that's only in the case of maybe a replacement device, but you may have other scenarios where you want to swap, let's say you want to swap a unit in one vehicle into another because maybe it's being auctioned off or something. So there's some discussion there, or some thoughts there on how you want to maintain that history. Do you, one option is you can just archive that one, and then we can create a new one. So in other words, you have that historical information where we could archive it and we create a brand new one, or we could just go in and basically replace it with the new one. So it's sort of up to Mace on how we do that, but just something to think about in terms of workflow in replacing on the vehicle side. The other thing you can do is modify the track colors. So in other words, the tracks that the vehicle has is the color option here. So you can change the colors, and if you click on this little thing here, there's a whole color palette you can pick from. And you can also change the icon. So there's a variety of icons that we have in a library. You can also, if you have your own, you can also create your own library of icons, and we could use those as well. So we can import in icons, and you can use those for different vehicle types. So just as a note.
Says icons, is it bitmap, PNG, is there a size of it?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Is there the file format, bitmap, PNG, what's for the library?
Bitmap, they're bitmap,
Okay.
BMPs. And so there's an option where actually if you have administrative rights, you can actually go in and import those in yourself, or of course we can help you with that as well. On the vehicle, there's something that's called an accumulator. This is on the vehicle. So if you have the editing privileges to edit a vehicle, down at the bottom below where you're adding the marker, which is again is the vehicle icon or the track, there's something called an accumulator. And this is where we can set up, again, if you're wanting to be notified when a vehicle needs to come in for maintenance, what you can do is essentially look at going